Why is it he feels some line has been crossed, some boundary transgressed? How much is too much? How far is too far? Margaret Atwood, Oryx and Crake. Hello everyone, my name is Elaine M. In this presentation will be a quick overview of education and genetics in Margaret Atwood's Oryx and Crake. The focus of this presentation is based on the article, A Tale Meant to Inform, Not to Amuse, by Susan M. Squire. Ms. Squire received her education at Princeton University and Stanford University. She is Brill Professor of Women's Studies in English at the Pennsylvania State University, where she directs the Science, Medicine, Technology, and Culture program. Questions to consider. What if we continue down the road we're already on? How slippery is the slope? What are our saving graces? And finally, who's got the will to stop us? And before we continue, it would be useful to have a definition for genethics. It's defined by the Oxford English Dictionary as the ethics of or ethical issues raised by genetics, genetic engineering, and biotechnology. Ms. Squire starts her article with an anecdote about taking her son to college. She says, as we negotiated the hurdles of the move-in day, with its long lines, elevators, and Rubbermaid rolling bins piled high with the necessities of college life, I found myself casting anxious glances at the environment that would be his for the next 4 years. Like other parents, I wondered about this world he was now entering, in which he would build his future. Maybe that's why my attention was drawn to the colleges attended by the two protagonists of Margaret Atwood's Oryx and Crake. A Tale of Two Schools. On the left here we have the Martha Graham Academy, where Jimmy attended college. The image shown here is Judith with the head of Holofernes. As Jimmy says, there was a gruesome statue of her in the front of the administration building. In her role, said the bronze plaque, as Judith, cutting off the head of a guy in a historical robe outfit called Holofernes. On the right is the Watson Crick Institute where Crake attends. Actually, this is an artistic rendition of the Francis Crick Institute, which is a biomedical research center in London that opened in 2016. The only college that Jimmy is able to get into with his high verbals and low math scores is the Martha Graham Academy. The academy was originally an arts and humanities college, and now it's a pretty depressing place. It's surrounded by industrial wastelands. It is infested by cockroaches. The classrooms have rolling brownouts. The air conditioners are broken. And the teachers are basically burnt out TV series actors who could not forgive the world for their plunge from marginal fame. Although the statue of its namesake shows the significance that art has the power to liberate from tyranny, that seems to have been forgotten. The curriculum now offers only commercially useful subjects. Instead of acting, singing, and dancing, students choose contemporary areas such as these. Jimmy goes into problematics, and this field prepares a word person like him to work for a corporation doing window dressing and decorating the cold, hard, numerical real world in flossy 2D verbiage. In contrast, we have the Watson Crick Institute, where Crake attends school. Once a student there, your future was assured. It was like going to Harvard had been back before it got drowned. The school is nicknamed Asperger's U, and it has all of these anemones, elegant suites. It has the most technologically advanced teaching materials. It has real food like real shrimp, real chocolate, coffee, real beer. And these anemones are all intended to help the brilliant weirdos who comprise its student body to focus on their studies. The biotechnology classes are cutting edge, imaginative, and potentially lucrative because the students are promised half the royalties from anything they invent. The mascot is the Spote Guider, which is one of the first successful splices, and it is a goat crossed with a spider to produce high tensile spider silk filaments in the milk. And the main application was bulletproof vests, and we'll circle back to that in just a moment. These images are from this slide and the next one are kind of what I imagine when I think of Watson Crick Institute. At the top we have a scene from Ender's Game, and then at the bottom it's the Institute in Fallout 4. Continuing on, here are a couple more images that bring to mind the Watson Crick Institute feel. On the top we have a scene from the new movie Ready Player One based on Ernie Klein's book. And on the bottom we have a scene from Equals, and this was based on George Orwell's 1984, this movie. Watson Crick Institute trained Crake to ignore his emotions and even his dreams, to trade the possibility of self-awareness for the fantasy of control. Squire. All of what Margaret Atwood writes is based in some way on some sort of truth, and that is why she calls what she writes speculative fiction. Speculative fiction is what could happen, what is happening here, now, this planet, soon. It's inspired by the imaginative force and the urgent social importance of scientific fact. And Atwood vows to inform us rather than to merely amuse us. And she says that she owes a lot of thanks to scientific magazines and books and articles, and she came from a family of scientists and grew up listening to conversations at the dinner table about genetics and things that were already happening, and she gets a lot of her ideas from reading pop science books and seeing what's being discovered and how it's being discovered. Here's an example of one of the technologies that Margaret Atwood has in Oryx and Crake that has already come to fruition. In 2002, Nexia Biotechnologies announced a textile produced through its proprietary transgenic goat technologies of splicing a goat and a spider. Here are a few other speculations that have materialized. There's lab-grown meat, human organs grown in pigs, there's food substitutes, and now there's scientific discussion on bringing back some extinct animals. Wondering if they've watched Jurassic Park. Any of them? Here's another example of research that's being done now that Margaret Atwood included in her Oryx and Crake, and that is using green fluorescent protein to decrypt previously invisible processes like the spread of cancer or the development of nerve cells. And the next two slides are just going to show a few pictures from the National Geographic of animals that have actually been made to glow for different research reasons. Okay, glowing animals from top to bottom, left to right. Start with mice. Fluorescent proteins injected into DNA in embryos. The psychedelic mouse minds will likely lend insight into how brains work. Pigs. Green fluorescent protein added to embryos. The scientists hope to use the fluorescence to track the development of adult stem cells in the pigs, which are genetically very similar to humans. Tobacco. It's a firefly-derived glow, and it does not require ultraviolet light to fluoresce. We have mice again. These ones, they actually figured out how to maintain and grow glowing sperm-created stem cells from genetically modified fluorescent mice. Zebrafish, a fluorescent protein introduced into the DNA. They were hoping to engineer a fish that would glow in the presence of toxic chemicals. So far, the fish have spawned no scientific advances, but they inspired the creation and clarification of laws governing genetically modified pets. Next, we have the nematode worm, green fluorescent protein introduced into its DNA. They isolated a gene they believed to control swallowing, egg laying, and pooping. The experiment may sound esoteric, but humans have rhythmic activities, swallowing, ovulating, giving birth, defecating, controlled by a similar gene. So the glowing worm could lead to solutions for a variety of ailments. Then we have bacteria, multiple colors of fluorescent protein introduced into the DNA. The protein could be used to literally watch how creatures work. With the monkey, there's green fluorescent protein introduced into the DNA of the egg via a virus, and this is to study Huntington disease, which destroys nervous tissue. In dogs, the red fluorescent protein was introduced via a virus into cloned DNA. The glow wasn't the point of the experiment, but it is evidence of the genetically modified nature of the dog. The ability to clone genetically modified dogs should improve the study of human genetic diseases, such as Parkinson's, according to the research team. And then cats. A red fluorescent protein was introduced via a virus into cloned DNA, which was then implanted into cat eggs and then implanted into the mother. It's hoped that the red glow, which appears in every organ of the cats, will improve the study of genetic diseases. On the top, we have some images that could go along with the pleblands. Squire says that in this time, animals are burned in mass bonfires to eradicate the spread of disease. There are violent summer thunderstorms that render outdoor activities impossible. The wealthy live in tidy corporate compounds patrolled by security guards, while the poor riot in toxic wastelands. And people in the developing world risk everything to get a foothold in the West, where workers for multinational corporations trade autonomy for a lavish lifestyle. And on the bottom, we have conception art from Elysium on the left, and then on the right, the city of Xander from Guardians of the Galaxy. Squire then goes over the three main characters in Oryx and Crake, starting with Jimmy, or Snowman. She says, "A Caruso castaway on the shores of the future. He is haunted by words and the worlds they no longer evoke." Carrying on, Oryx is a practical tutor for the Quakers, and she does distribute the Bliss Plus pills worldwide without realizing what she's distributing. And Crake uses her to put in motion a chain of events that leads to a scheme for survival based on eradicating humanity's inherent flaws. Squire next briefly discusses Glenn, better known as Crake. He's a brilliant but socially isolated scientist, and a quote that kind of encapsulates his personality is when he says, "The best diseases, from a business point of view," said Crake, "would be those that cause lingering illnesses. Ideally, that is, for maximum profit. The patient should either get well or die just before all of his or her money runs out. It's a fine calculation. Squire only briefly talks about the Bliss Plus pill. But here on the left, a quote from the book, it's a surefire one-time does-it-all birth control pill for male and female alike. And on the right is a sample of like an advertisement that a wordy person might have put together to sell it. And the disclaimer at the bottom is quite funny, may or may not cause serious side effects such as death, but it comes in 16 fruity flavors. Next, Squire talks about the Paradise Project. A quote is demand for resources has exceeded supply for decades in marginal geopolitical areas, hence the famines and droughts. But very soon, demand is going to exceed supply for everyone. And this picture is from the Eden Project in the UK, which is quite interesting if you have time to check that out. It says on their website it's an educational charity that connects us with each other and to the living world, exploring how we can work towards a better future. Squire says that Atwood imagines a drastic revision of the human species that will purge humankind of all our negative traits. Squire then talks about the Crakers. She says they are scientifically designed to eliminate racism, hierarchy, territoriality, and sexual jealousy. She says that what happens when they are evicted from paradise is, of course, another story, not Crake's, but Jimmy's, and our own. How do Jimmy and Crake's different educations prepare them for the world that they will shape as adults? Their educations produced not just knowledge, but deep and devastating ignorance of themselves and the natural world around them. Atwood's depictions of the underfunded Martha Graham Academy and the lavishly funded Watson Crick Institute challenge our fascination with what science can do at the expense of what art can say. And as Atwood says in an interview with Studio Q,
you think on the one hand, oh, this will be great, and then you think, but wait a minute. And it is the same with every technology that we invent. There's always a good use, a bad use, and then a third use, which is the one that you haven't anticipated.
Oryx and Crake offers an entertaining and only slightly exaggerated satire of commercial biotechnology, whose audacious products bear jarring names like Chicky Knobs, Happy Cup of Coffee, So Yummy Ice Cream, and Sveltana No Meat Cocktail Sausages. Squire says the novel presents a brutal portrait of a world where the ethical burden of history has been reduced to video games, such as Extinctathon, Barbarian Stomp, and Blood and Roses. And it describes a brilliant bestiary involuntarily unleashed by a proprietary bioengineering, pagoons, rekunks, snats, and those vicious-looking wolvogs on the top right. Squire concludes by saying, readers will find a powerful meditation on how education that separates scientific and aesthetic ways of knowing produces ignorance and a wounded world. In close, if you have anything you'd like to share or discuss or ask, go ahead and leave me a comment. And thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Imagine a world where you can reverse the effects of age, stress, and sun. From the leading name in biotechnology comes Regenerate, another breakthrough from the Umbrella Corporation. Regenerate's revolutionary T-cell formula actually brings dead cells back to life. Now, your youthful beauty can last forever. Always consult your doctor before starting treatment. Some side effects may occur.